The sky above Earth shimmered like a quiet ocean of stars, waves of light flickering across the dark nothingness. But to Nira, it was more than beautiful. It was unfamiliar, dangerous, alive in ways her homeworld Viraeos had long forgotten. From the edge of the clouds, her ship hovered silent, invisible, wrapped in cloaking fields older than most human cities below her. The world turned slowly beneath its own dreams. Soft winds brushing treetops, quiet rivers reflecting moonlight, and somewhere down there among the green and the shadows stood him, the human she could not stop watching. Callan. She did not know his name at first, only the shape of him, tall, broad, strong. The way he moved across the grassy field was unlike anything she had been taught about human males. He was not aggressive, not posturing. He was alert, yes, but careful, as if he belonged to the land rather than tried to conquer it. Nira leaned forward in her cockpit, eyes glowing softly in the dim light. Her skin shimmered pale like silver glass. Her hair dark with threads of violet curled gently around her jaw, and her fingers twitched above the control panel, unsure whether to zoom closer or pull away her heart. The second one, not the biological, but the emotional center of her species, beat too fast. Her kind, the Varians, had always told her that humans were primitive, unpredictable, and above all, dangerous. Yet here was one kneeling gently beside a wounded animal. Its leg twisted awkwardly, its breathing labored. The human touched it not to kill, but to calm. That should have been impossible. She remembered her training: males dominate, females protect none, show vulnerability, none value life without purpose. Virian law was clear: compassion was weakness, and weakness was death. But he had not killed, he had fed the creature, even broken a piece of his own food, and placed it on the ground before it, and now he sat beside it quietly like a guardian. Like something from the ancient stories whispered before war erased such things. Nira zoomed in her ship's sensors, tracking his every breath, every pulse, her curiosity, a flame now impossible to contain, and then something changed. The wind shifted, the trees groaned, and a low growl echoed from the forest line. It was not the wounded animal, this was larger, closer, hungry. Her eyes snapped to movement. A predator stepped from the brush, massive, covered in scales and bristled spines, its eyes glowing gold with heat and hunger. It saw the human, it saw the food, and it charged. Nira's breath caught her fingers. Froze, the ship could not move in time. She was not supposed to interfere. Only observe. She had come to understand humans, not to die with them. But Callan moved before the beast even reached him. He stood, grabbed a branch thick as his arm, and stepped in front of the animal, not behind. Not to the side, but directly between it and the helpless prey. Why? Why would he? She watched as he shouted something, his voice low but commanding his posture. Wide braced for impact, when the beast lunged, he struck the branch across its snout, not once but twice, firm and fearless. The creature reeled, blood in its eye, before retreating back into the trees. Silence returned. Nira could not move, her breath shallow, her hands trembling in ways that had nothing to do with fear. Her mind raced. Her mission had been to observe mating rituals, to study male behavior, to see if Earth posed a threat. But this was something else she was trained to recognize. Power to track dominance, to catalog fear. This man Callan had shown all of that, and yet he had chosen mercy, not hunger, not control, but protection. And now, as he sat beside the wounded animal again, hands steady, blood on his shirt, Nira realized she had seen something no Virian had ever believed existed. A male who fought not to conquer, but to care. A species that guarded the weak even when no one was watching. And suddenly her mission no longer made sense. Suddenly she was not sure who the alien truly was. The forest below was quiet again, too quiet. Like it was watching, holding its breath just as she was. Nira sat frozen in the cockpit of her hovering vessel, the controls still warm under her hands but untouched since the attack. The air inside felt too small, too still. She should have left. She should have turned the ship and flown back to the clouds, to the dark comfort of orbit and silence. But her eyes would not move from the image on the screen. The human named Callan still crouched beside the creature, now limping away toward the brush. Its fear slowly melting into trust. Nira leaned back, her armor creaking softly against the seat. Her breath shaky. She had studied hundreds of cultures, dissected behaviors, patterns, histories, but none of them had prepared her for this, for a male who defied instinct and rewrote it with compassion. She needed to understand more. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light over the edge of the trees. Shadows stretched long and deep across the clearing, as if the forest itself was trying to reclaim the day. Nira adjusted her ship's position, drifting silently through the sky until she hovered closer, just beyond the tree line. Her feet touched earth for the first time, with a hesitant step, the moss cool beneath her boots. Her cloak shimmered around her, keeping her hidden. She moved slowly between branches, her eyes locked on the human camp, where a group of them gathered laughing, passing food under string lights. It was peaceful in a way her people had forgotten. She moved closer. Her breathing measured every sense on high alert, and then a sound cracked behind her, a twig. She spun around, hand instinctively reaching for the blade at her hip, but what stepped into view was not a human. It was something worse. A predator not native to this place, but familiar to her from old training archives, tall, jagged with limbs too long, and jaws that split twice across a face that had no eyes. Only Heat, a Varian scout hound genetically bred to hunt deserters, her kind had found her. The creature hissed a low, unnatural sound and crouched. Its legs tensed for the kill. Nira's mind raced. She had no weapon strong enough to stop it, and her ship was too far to reach in time. She braced for pain, for the weight of claws, for the sound of bones cracking. But then a blur. A figure moved fast from the trees, a shout rang out, and the predator was struck from the side. Callan again, a branch in hand, eyes blazing, body moving with precision and fury. He struck again and again, forcing the beast back with nothing but instinct and fire. Nira gasped as the scout hound retreated, vanishing into the brush with a screech. The air stilled once more. Callan turned, his chest heaving, his shirt torn, his hands bleeding, but his gaze focused not on the creature, not on himself, but on her. He had seen her. Her cloak shimmered, then failed, light bending wrong, revealing her silhouette, pale silver skin, dark violet hair, eyes wide and glowing with disbelief. Callan took a step forward, not with a weapon, not with fear. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low. Steady, Nira could not speak for a moment. Her translator had not activated. Her throat felt thick with shock. "I am," she whispered finally, her voice small, unsure. He smiled, confused but calm. "I didn't expect to find someone else out here. Who are you?" She hesitated again. Every protocol screamed at her to run, to erase the moment, to disappear, but she didn't. Before she could answer, the rest of the group from earlier came rushing through the trees, voices loud, eyes wide with curiosity and alarm. They stopped short at the sight of her and Callan. No one moved. The moment stretched long, like the shadows around them. Callan turned to them and spoke something she didn't catch, but his tone was reassuring, grounded. They nodded slowly, stepping closer, but keeping distance, their expressions a mix of wonder and caution. Nira stood still. Every instinct told her to vanish, disappear back into sky and solitude. But another instinct, stronger now, told her to stay, because for the second time this day, a human had stood between her and death, and something in her heart had started to shift. The humans surrounded her, but not in the way her training had warned. There were no weapons pointed, no shouts, no traps, just eyes wide with caution and a kind of hesitant curiosity, like they were seeing something rare and delicate. Nira stood frozen, her muscles tight. Every instinct from her world screamed at her to disappear, to hide, to survive. But something about the way Callan stood slightly ahead of the others, his body loose but ready, his hand resting casually near hers without touching, told her she was not in danger. Not yet. One of the humans, a woman with sharp eyes and a steady voice, stepped forward. Her name was Mara. Nira caught it through the messy rush of overlapping conversation. Mara did not smile, but her stance was not aggressive either. She simply studied Nira head to toe, weighing possibilities faster than her mouth moved. Another human, taller, broader, With a laugh too loud for the tension named Dax circled around to the side, clearly fascinated, but trying not to show it. "Are you really from another world?" Dax blurted, his voice cracking with excitement. Nira nodded, slow, careful, unsure how much to reveal. Unsure what rules applied here. The group murmured among themselves, shifting glances darting at her and at Callan, but no one moved closer. No one tried to cage her. Then Callan spoke, his voice cutting through the noise. "She is not a threat." It was not a question, not a plea, just a statement, like a mountain stating it would not move. That seemed to settle something, an invisible agreement forming between them. Mara stepped back. Dax stuffed his hands awkwardly in his pockets, and the others drifted toward the campfire again, their curiosity still burning, but softened for now. Callan turned to her, his voice softer now, almost private. "You should come with us. You can't stay out here alone." Nira hesitated, her ship cloaked and hidden was only a mile away. She could vanish tonight, pretend none of this had happened, but she did not want to. Not yet. Without speaking, she nodded once. Callan smiled, that slow, careful smile that made something in her chest ache in a way she did not understand yet, and together they walked back toward the flickering light of the human settlement. The camp was small, just a few modest structures built from wood and metal, surrounded by gardens and rough fencing. Solar panels glinted on the roofs, and soft yellow lights strung overhead swayed gently in the evening breeze. It smelled of earth and smoke and something sweeter than she could name. Inside a small house at the edge of the camp, Callan showed her in simple rough walls, a fireplace, a table covered with tools and books, a couch with a frayed blanket home. He moved through the space, easily offering her a chair, water, food, speaking in short, easy bursts, as if he knew she needed time to adapt. Nira touched nothing, just watched, absorbing every detail. The way the lights buzzed faintly, the way the wood floor creaked, the way he kept glancing at her, without staring, giving her space but not retreating. At last, when the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the clouds in crimson and gold, Callan set a plate of food in front of her. "Eat," he said simply. She stared at it, uncertain. "It's safe," he added, smiling. "Not the tight kind. Humans gave when lying, but real open." Nira reached out, slowly picked up a piece of the bread, tore it in half, feeling its softness, the warmth that clung to it. It was different from anything on Viraeos, different from anything she had been taught to expect from life. She took a bite. It tasted like belonging. That night, as the humans retreated to their homes and the stars crept silently over the world, Nira sat near the fire, Callan across from her, Dax and Mara nearby, their conversation fading into soft laughter and drifting to silence. For the first time in her life, Nira was not being watched, weighed, judged. She was simply there, existing with them, breathing the same air. And when Callan looked at her across the fire, his eyes reflecting the stars, she realized something dangerous and wonderful. She did not want to leave. The night wrapped the camp in a blanket of silence, only broken by the occasional crackle of the dying fire and the soft hum of distant crickets. Nira sat close to the flames, her knees pulled to her chest, her silver eyes reflecting the shifting embers around her. Callan sat not far off, sharpening an old hunting knife across a worn stone, his movements slow, steady, comforting. For a moment, Nira allowed herself to believe that this place was safe, that maybe she had found a sliver of peace on a planet she was never meant to call home. Then the ground trembled. It was faint at first, so faint even the humans did not notice, just a slight vibration through the soles of their boots. Through the bones of the earth, Nira's head snapped up, her instincts screaming before her mind could catch up. She stood slowly, scanning the horizon beyond the camp fence. The woods were unnaturally still. The stars above looked the same, but the air tasted wrong. Dax noticed her stiffen and stood too, a hand drifting toward the battered old rifle hanging near the doorway. "What is it?" he asked, voice low. Nira shook her head, not sure how to explain, but Callan had already caught it, the way animals catch the scent of fire before the smoke rises. "Something's coming," he said. Before Nira could answer, the first shadow tore across the sky, A ship sleek and dark against the stars hovering above the treetops. Silent at first, then roaring to life with a sound that shook the very breath from her lungs. Two more ships followed, peeling through the night like hunters scenting wounded prey. Mara cursed under her breath. The others scrambled for cover. Dax shouting something about weapons and alarms, but Nira knew better. It was too late. They had found her. They had come for her. Varian hunters, brutal enforcers, of the old ways, those who left the path. Those who questioned the code were not permitted to exist. She felt her chest tighten, the old fear rising, the urge to run clawing at her throat. But then she felt it, a hand at her back, steady, warm, not pushing her away, not dragging her along, but anchoring her. Callan, he stood beside her, facing the descending ships. His shoulders squared his jaw, set his eyes burning with the kind of fire that spoke of choices already made. "They want you," he said, his voice low but unshakable. Nira nodded, unable to trust her voice. "Then they have to come through me first," before she could protest. Before she could remind him what he was facing, the night exploded. The Varian ships opened their hatches, black armored figures dropping like shadows across the field. Their weapons gleaming under the cold light, orders barked in a language only she understood. Commands to seize, to silence, to destroy. The camp's alarms howled into life. Humans shouted, scattered, seeking cover. As the invaders advanced, Nira stepped forward, instinct pulling her into a defensive stance. Every muscle ready to fight, but Callan grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "No," he said, "not like this. We cannot outrun them," she hissed, her voice trembling with fury. "No," he agreed, "but we can survive." He turned to the others, Dax, Mara, and the few remaining humans who had not fled. "Get the kids, get the wounded, head to the tunnels, we hold the line." Dax hesitated just long enough for Callan to shove a weapon into his hands. Then he was moving, shouting orders, rounding up the others. Mara grabbed an old shotgun and took position near the broken gate. Nira watched it all, stunned at the speed, at the trust they placed in him without question. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice barely audible over the rising storm. Callan turned to her, his face lit by fire and defiance. "You are part of us now, and we protect our own." The first shot rang out, splitting the night wide open. The battle for Nira's life, for her future. For the choice to belong or vanish had begun, and this time she would not run. She would stand and fight, not for survival, but for the home she had never dared to dream she could find. The sky had become a furnace, streaks of fire cut across the stars. As plasma rounds ripped through the treetops, burning leaves to ash, the Varian hunters advanced like a tide. Precise, ruthless shadows with no names and no mercy. The camp that had once been filled with laughter now echoed with the cries of the wounded and the hiss of smoke curling into the night. Nira ran, not away but toward the sound of danger. Her legs burned, her chest heaved, but she moved with purpose, her eyes scanning for Callan, for the man who had stood between her and death more than once. She found him near the outer fence, crouched behind a stack of broken solar panels exchanging fire, with two Varians who had taken position on a rise above the clearing. His face was streaked with ash blood across his temple, but his eyes were clear, steady. "Get to the ship," he shouted when he saw her go now. "No," Nira yelled back. "We go together." Another blast tore through the ground between them, showering both in dirt and sparks. They didn't flinch, didn't stop moving. Callan ducked low, rolled to her side, and grabbed her wrist. This way, they weaved through the chaos, past burning crates, overturned tables, and bodies. Too still to speak, Nira's mind raced. She could hear the Varian commands through the smoke, orders to surround the cabin, to capture, not kill her alive, her alone. She gritted her teeth and pushed harder, her heart pounding with something more than fear. They reached the tree line just as another wave of Varians descended from the sky, the shadows of their dropped ships flickering across the clearing. Like vultures, Nira's ship stood waiting, a silver phantom between branches, its engines already pulsing with energy. She had activated the launch sequence before the first shot had even been fired. A part of her had always known this moment would come. Inside, now she shouted, her voice sharper than ever before. Callan climbed the ramp after her, his movements fast but ragged as she sealed the hatch behind them. Two plasma blasts slammed against the hull. The ship shuddered but held. "Hold on," she warned, as she slammed her palm against the ignition panel. The cockpit flared to life, runes glowing across the dashboard in the language of a world he could not read but trusted anyway. The ship roared up through the canopy trees, splintered birds scattered, and the ground fell away beneath them. Within seconds, they were punching through the cloud layer, a final round of fire trailing behind them like angry comets. "Are we clear?" Callan asked, breathless eyes locked on the screen. "No." Nira replied, her voice tight, "Not yet." Outside, three Varian ships gave chase, their angular wings slicing through the upper atmosphere, engines burning hotter than hers, faster, stronger. "They're gaining," Callan said, already reaching for the weapons console. "I know," Nira replied, "but I have something they don't." She reached beneath the console and pulled a small crystal key from a hidden slot, inserting it into the ship's core. The lights dimmed, the engines hummed a deeper pitch, and suddenly the ship veered sideways impossibly fast. Callan gripped the seat as they spun between clouds, dodging a blast that would have torn the hull in half. "What was that phase drift maneuver?" she said, smiling. "Just barely custom upgrade." Another volley struck near the rear port systems, flared red. Nira cursed and adjusted their trajectory. She needed to buy time, not just for herself, but for the people below, for Callan, who had made her believe there was something worth saving here. "We can't keep outrunning them," Callan said grimly. "What now? We make them lose us," she said, her hands dancing across the controls. "We burn the signature. We vanish." How? She didn't answer. Not with words. Instead, she pulled a switch that powered down every external beacon, every heat trace, every readable signal. The ship dimmed, even its lights flickering off as if it had died. They drifted through the upper atmosphere, silent, dark. One ship among stars, the Varians streaked past, chasing ghosts. For a moment, only breath remained heavy, tired, grateful. "They're gone," Callan whispered. "For now," Nira replied, "but they'll be back." He looked at her in the dim light, the faint glow of the console reflecting in her silver eyes. "Then we'll be ready next time." He said. She nodded, her heart still pounding, but no longer with panic, with something else, with purpose. As Earth faded behind them and the stars stretched out ahead, Nira felt something shift deep within her. She was no longer fleeing, she was choosing. Choosing a fight, choosing a path, choosing someone. The stars outside were endless, cold and silent, glowing softly against the void. But inside the ship, the silence was louder still, the kind that fills spaces where words should be. Nira sat at the controls, her hands resting lightly over the glowing panel, her eyes fixed on nothing and everything all at once. They had escaped for now, but escape was only half of survival. The other half was choosing what came next. Behind her, Callan paced slowly, arms folded across his chest, his footsteps quiet but steady. His presence grounding. She had never realized how much comfort could come from simple sound, from someone breathing near you, from knowing you were not alone. At last he spoke. "You keep doing that, doing what, going quiet, like you're not really here." Nira turned her head slightly, her gaze soft. "I'm trying to figure out what I've done." Callan frowned. "You saved us both. You flew us out of hell." "No, I mean bigger than that." She stood slowly, walking to the viewport where the stars stretched like rivers of fire across black velvet. "I wasn't supposed to connect like this, not with humans, not with anyone." "Connect," Callan echoed. "You mean emotionally?" "More than that," she said quietly. "For my people, there is something we call the bond. It only forms when we feel true. Trust, deep safety. It awakens something inside us, a resonance. It can affect systems, technology, energy. It can even create physical reactions." She turned to face him, the lights on her skin dimming and flaring in rhythm with her breath. "And you feel it now?" She nodded. "The moment I touched you in the forest, when you pulled me from that creature, when you stood between me and my death, it began." Callan's brow furrowed, his voice cautious. "Is it dangerous?" "It can be," she said, "if unreturned, if forced, if denied. It can tear a mind apart, but if accepted, it can become something else, something rare." She stepped closer, not threatening, not dramatic, simply honest. When I feel you near my systems, amplify my senses, sharpen my instincts, change, you're saying you draw power from me? Not from you, she corrected, from the connection, from the trust we've built. Callan looked at her for a long moment, the hum of the ship filling the silence between their thoughts. Then he said quietly, I don't know how to explain it, but ever since I met you, nothing has felt the same. Like the world has color I never saw before. Like I stopped surviving and started living. Nira's voice dropped to a whisper. That's the bond. Their hands brushed, not held, not grabbed, just touched, and the ship responded. The lights brightened, the hum shifted higher, and somewhere deep in the control system, a pulse of energy rippled outward, unnoticed by either of them, but not by those listening. Far away, a signal blinked to life, a ping not meant to be sent. Nira froze, her eyes going wide. What is it? Callan asked, instantly alert. She rushed to the console, scanning the systems. A pulse just activated. I didn't do it. It triggered when we touched. What does it mean? It means they know, she whispered. Who the Varians? The bond activated a beacon from within the ship. They've traced me again. Callan stepped beside her, his expression sharp. Then let's go. Let's run. We can't. She said they're faster, and now they'll come in force next time. They won't just chase, they'll corner us. Then what do? We stop running, she said slowly, and we start planning. The screen flickered, a red dot glowing on the map. They're coming, not yet. Callan said, his hand resting on hers. Not this minute, so we breathe. We rest, we get ready, and next time we don't escape. We fight. Nira looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since fleeing her home, she did not feel like prey. She felt like part of something worth protecting. Space pulsed like a heartbeat around them. Stars blinking slow and cold as Nira's ship drifted through the edge of shadow and light. Callan stood at the helm beside her, both of them watching the glowing red dot on the screen grow larger. With every passing minute, the Varian mothership was no longer chasing them. It was waiting. They had made their decision hours ago after decoding the beacon pulse, confirming it had activated an ancient Varian tracking protocol which could not be outrun or jammed, only shut down from its source. And the source was there. A monolith of metal suspended in orbit above Earth, as silent as it was monstrous. The Varian command ship floated like a god forgotten by time, its dark frame absorbing light instead of reflecting it, its surface smooth like polished bone covered in shifting glyphs that moved like whispers. There it is, Callan said low, his voice steady but sharp. Nira nodded, her silver gaze hard. They're expecting us to run. They don't think we'll come to them. Then let's disappoint them. The ship's cloaking device flickered into place as Nira adjusted their course, dipping them into the shadow of a passing asteroid belt. The field around their hull buzzed faintly, particles bending away their presence like water around stone. The plan was reckless. Get close undetected, breach the lower docking ring, slip into the control core, and deactivate the tracking matrix directly from the heart of the enemy. Easy, she muttered without a hint of a smile. You've done this before? Callan asked quietly. Not with someone I needed to protect. They approached silently, the command ship looming larger until it blocked out the stars. Nira's hands moved quickly across the controls, muscle memory and instinct guiding every adjustment. The ship tucked itself into the underbelly of the massive vessel just beneath the automated sensors. They're blind here, Nira said for now. She locked the coordinates, disabled all external signals, and powered down everything but life support. Time to go. The docking tube extended with a soft hiss, connecting them like a needle to a vein the moment the seal clicked. Nira's armor adjusted across her frame, shifting into tactical mode. Her silhouette sleek and sharp edged her face calm. Her eyes unreadable, Callan wore a reinforced vest borrowed from the storage bay. His steps quiet but firm, his breath slow, controlled. No second thoughts, he asked. None, she said. They moved through the tube, silent as ghosts emerging into a narrow corridor that pulsed with pale blue light, the walls alive with soft patterns of energy like veins beneath translucent skin. Nira led with ease, bypassing locks, slipping through maintenance shafts, avoiding sensors. She knew this place not because she had seen it, but because her blood remembered it. Every Varian was connected to the command structure through design, through inheritance. She felt the hum of the ship like a distant drumbeat guiding her steps. "They're adjusting to us," she whispered. "Their systems can feel me. Is that good or bad?" "Depends. If we move fast enough, they reach the core chamber. A circular room lined with interfaces glowing red, with waiting commands in the center. A massive column of light streamed upward into the dark above, alive with rotating scripts. "That's the Matrix," Nira said voice. "Quiet, that's where we end this." She stepped forward, connected her data spike to the panel, and began to override the core. Each command pushed back the system, recognizing her and rejecting her in equal measure. Then the alarm started. Red light slammed into the room like a rising tide, and distant footsteps echoed through the corridor. The ship had recognized her betrayal. "We've got company," Callan said, pulling a plasma sidearm. "Just hold them off a little longer." The doors burst open and the first Varian guards flooded in. Dark armor, gleaming weapons raised. Callan didn't hesitate. He moved like lightning, a blur of fists and fire, dodging blasts, striking with clean, brutal precision. Nira had no time to watch. She was in the system now, deep past defenses, into the code of her ancestors. She spoke softly under her breath, not to Callan but to the ship. "You were not built for this war. You were built for truth. Let me in." The system hesitated, then yielded. The matrix flickered, went dim, and the red light across the ship's interface died all at once. "Tracking offline," she whispered. She turned to Callan, who had pinned the last guard against the wall, his face bruised but his grip unshaken. "We're done," she said, breathless. "Let's go." They ran back through the winding halls, chased now by sirens and flickering lights, the mothership shaking from its own confusion. As they reached the dock, the ship's engines roared to life, and Nira's vessel peeled away from the dying machine. The view behind them lit with internal explosions, containment, failing systems collapsing. Callan looked out the viewport, eyes wide. "We did it. For now," Nira said, her voice softer than before. "But the real war hasn't even started yet." The stars blurred past the ship like glowing threads in a tapestry, pulled tight across the dark. Nira sat in silence at the helm, her hands loose over the console. Her breathing slow, but inside her, something trembled. Not with fear, but with weight. The kind of weight that comes after you change something so deeply it cannot be undone. Beside her, Callan leaned back in his seat, one arm resting over the edge. His knuckles still bruised from the last fight, but his eyes calm, steady. He had not asked for this life, for the danger, for the war that was not his. But he had stepped into it like it belonged to him, and somehow now it did. The ship drifted in low power mode, cloaked among the dust fields of a dead moon, resting, not hiding, just waiting. "We bought ourselves time," Nira said softly. "But that ship we took down was only one node in a greater system. When they regroup, they will hunt again." "Then we stay ready," Callan replied, his voice firm, "or we make sure there is nothing left for them to hunt with." She turned to look at him, the shadows on her face softer now, her silver eyes no longer sharp like blades but quiet like moonlight. "You have changed me," she said, "and not just in the way my people would fear." How back on Virios, we are taught that love is a weakness, that connection creates vulnerability, that feeling is a liability. And now I understand that connection is not weakness. It is the reason we survive. Callan gave a small smile. "And you think we can survive what comes next?" "We have to," she answered. "Because I am not running anymore, and I am not hiding. I will not be what they made me to be. I will be what I choose to be." "And what is that?" She stood, walked to the center of the deck, the stars behind her glowing like echoes of another lifetime. "A bridge," she said, "between what was and what could be." He joined her, the two of them silhouetted against the infinite sky. "So what now?" he asked. "We make contact." Nira said, "We speak to the others, not just mine, but yours too. Those who would listen, those who would help us build something better. A human and an alien forging a future together," Callan said, shaking his head. "Never thought I'd be that story." We are all stories, Nira replied, but we choose how they end. They stood there for a while, no words, no plans, just presence, the quiet between them, not empty but full, the kind of quiet that comes after truth. And then from the back of the ship, a signal blinked. Not from the Vyrians, not from a threat, but from another ship, a reply. Someone had heard them far beyond the stars. Something stirred. A beginning. Not of peace, but of possibility. And maybe that is all they needed. If you were given a second chance to stand beside someone like Callan or Nira, would you fight for something bigger than yourself? Would you risk everything to build a new kind of future? Let us know in the comments your thoughts on this human and alien bond. What would you choose?